Hey everyone, welcome to today's WorkSmart Live. This is Communicating in the Cloud. I'm Dawn Church, I'm WorkSmart's events manager, and if you joined us for our live session the other day, you probably saw we had a little bit of technical issues. Unfortunately, Marissa's power went out and we lost her entirely. So instead of just having a recording out there with some glitches and also not actually hearing from Marissa and only hearing from me, we decided to re-record it so that you could get the full experience that we intended you to have. So with that, welcome to the new recording of Communicating in the Cloud. So today, we're going to talk about this idea of moving past email. I think I said this in the email that I sent out, ironically, a few times, but it's time to break up with email, or at least it's time to see some other apps. And the reason for that is because we have historically used email to fulfill all of the needs of our cloud communication. And that turns into a huge bottleneck. So, and I made this, Hannah did a little visual experience for you so you can kind of see all the things that we have historically relied on email for that have created a lot of problems. So number one, ongoing and lengthy conversations. So I know that you're not watching this real time, but if you were, I'd ask you to raise your hand digitally if this sounds familiar to you. Sounds familiar to me. This problem that we have with email, where we have one thread that's going back and forth for days or weeks or sometimes even months. And those threads go back so far that if you try and pull it up on your phone and you scroll all the way down to the bottom, you can only see one character of a word at a time. And it's inefficient and it's too much. So it's not the right way to keep those conversations going, especially sometimes you might have like 3 or 4 different email threads for one conversation. And that's where things start to get really crazy. So ongoing and lengthy conversations creates a bottleneck in an email. So this back and forth scheduling of meetings things, right? That probably sounds familiar to a lot of people, where you go back and forth around, I have this block available today. How about you? No? And then it goes back and forth until you find the right spot. And that's also very inefficient. Again, creating a little bit of a bottleneck for work to get done by using email for this. So file sharing and storage. All right, so this is probably the biggest thing, is when you have a document and you send it back and forth to 4, 5, 6 different people, everybody working on this one document, not together, but making changes here, making changes there, and then you have 5 different versions of this document floating around out there, and it's very inefficient. And again, creates a bottleneck for work to get done. Instant communication. All right, so this is a big pet peeve of mine as an event planner. I have vendors, I have some participants even sometimes, who will send me an email letting me know it's the day of an event. The event is supposed to happen right now. And they'll send me an email saying something to the effect of, I'm here, where are you? I can't find you. And I don't have my email open in front of me right then and there. I have my hands filled with catering supplies and tables and chairs, and that's just, I'm not watching my email. I'm just not watching my email. So if you're trying to use email for instant communication, again, here's a bit of a bottleneck, right? Task management. So that's that kind of idea of like when you maybe leave an email unread. I'm notorious for this with text messages. You leave an email unread so that you remember to go back and do the thing in the email. That's not really the right way to do that. That's how you end up with 1,000 unread emails, right? And then the last thing is this note-taking, which Marissa gave me permission. She actually sent me this picture, by the way. I did not request it. Her inbox semi-recently, I believe, where you send yourself a note to remember to do something by sending yourself an email. And that creates more clutter. It creates, again, a lot more like unread emails that you have to kind of sift through in order to get to the actual emails that you need to respond to. So, and by the way, we do this with everyone that we communicate with, right? So not only are we using email to fulfill all of these needs, right? We're asking email to do this with everyone in the world, everyone that we want to connect to, and everyone maybe that we don't want to connect to, right? Like I get so many spam emails. So it's a lot of times actually I get spam emails for other people who have held a similar role within WorkSmart before, and I know it's a spam because it's addressed to the other person's name. But because we're doing this, we're doing all of these things with all of these different people, it creates a real strong bottleneck for work getting done. So there is a better way to do this. My husband actually says, and I'm going to steal this from him, which he stole from somebody else, email is a to-do list that anyone can add to. So we want to talk today kind of about communication in the cloud, but also collaboration in the cloud, right? Like there's a better way to send information back and forth, but there's also a better way to collaborate around an idea. So with that, I believe that's all that I had on this side. Oops, I went too fast. Marissa, would you like to talk about what we're doing today?
Yeah, absolutely. So, Dawn highlighted the bottleneck that email provides us, or I should say creates for us. So when we talk about leveraging the tools in the cloud and fostering this idea of increased productivity and just simpler ways to do our jobs, especially now with such a distributed workforce affecting so many of us, so many small businesses, looking at how we work and finding a better way to do that is really important. So from here, we're going to start talking more about how we work. So it's easy to break this up into kind of two things, and Dawn kind of hit on it. We've got communicating and we have collaborating. And for us to be effective as teams working together, we need to know which tools to use. So we can start kind of highlighting which tools to use by talking about framing how we talk about teamwork and communication. So when we talk about working, we've got this idea, two ideas of flowing of information, communication and collaboration. So communication is that that idea of sharing information in a very linear fashion. It's going from one person to another. It really is an exchange of knowledge that ends after the initial exchange. Collaboration is more cyclical or circular. There is that sharing of work and effort, and it's coming together to produce or to create something. So there's a difference between how we may share information when it's communication versus something like collaboration. So how, let's focus on communication. How do we communicate? When we talk about it, it's whether it's in your team or with folks outside the organization, there are typically three factors for influence. And this first one is audience. Who are you trying to reach and what is your message? That can really determine what tool you use. Is it an important client communication that needs to be stored in a certain fashion? Are these people you work with regularly, like departments or core projects? Organization-wide messages, those are different in how we inform and engage on a broader audience. And then of course there's the customers versus vendors just on your day-to-day work. But thinking beyond the audience and how we are, how we communicate, we also need to think about speed, and we also need to think about your tone. So I'm gonna hone in a little bit more on these, because the audience is becoming so much more blended now with the traditional tools that we use. Whereas I think maybe before we've been more reliant on email or the phone to communicate with our customers. And the cloud is bringing so much more functionality that we really can use the audience in so many different ways. And so speed and tone for me really make it easy to kind of hone in on which tool we're going to use when we're talking about teamwork. So the speed. So how's your speed? You know, how fast do you need a response? If I need an answer now, I can't just yell at Dawn anymore. I used to be able to stand at my desk and kind of pivot and yell over to her desk, which is probably a good thing for the account managers that used to share the office with us. They probably enjoy not having that anymore. But for that real-time communication, I have to turn to technology. And if we have the same expectation, Dawn and I, if we have that same expectation on how quickly we need a response and what tool to use, it makes it really easy to get what you need in a timely manner.
I have one thing to contest on that. I think that the account managers probably miss us. We were quite entertaining. Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
They do.
Yes.
And we miss them too.
We miss them.
But in the meantime, when we're talking about real-time communication, whether it's that one-on-one chat because I need something from Dawn, or if it's a group chat because I want the account managers to not miss out on the collaboration between Dawn and I.
There we go. We're just going to start a group chat. It's great.
Love it.
This is why that exists.
And then, you know, if it's voice calls, like your phone system, remember the phone isn't dead. It certainly is a communication tool that proves useful for so many things. So you don't want to ignore that as part of the conversation, even though some people do shy away from using it, especially now that we have video. I feel like everyone's getting used to being put on the spot, so maybe not so much anymore. But with phones, I encourage you to think about a better way to do this. If you're doing it the right way, do you have traditional phone lines, or are you using a hosted voice over IP system or something like Microsoft Teams that has that phone capability to combine and centralize the way that we communicate? And I'll talk a little bit more about that later. So, you know, when we're talking about real-time communication, you're probably familiar with things like Teams, which replaced the Skype for Business. We've got Slack as a competitor to Teams. Of course, we put the phone icon in here to remind you that there is a phone, even if it doesn't look like the traditional phone on your desk. But then there's also this kind of moment in time broadcast of information, this like later announcements category. And that could be, you know, like it could be announcements to your team. It could be client-facing updates, newsletters. So here I've listed some icons. The Sway icon is that first one you might not be familiar with. That's a Microsoft 365 tool that allows you to create really easy pared down presentations, newsletters, instead of having to do a lot of higher editing in something like a PowerPoint. SharePoint combines with Teams in so many different ways beyond just having a SharePoint intranet site, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. Stream is Microsoft's video platform, video sharing. That's a great way to share messages. And then of course, just email. Email is a thing as well for sharing announcements, if it makes sense. But then we also have a tone. And we know we've got this, when you work for a company like WorkSmart that has a very relaxed and conversational style, I don't mean formal as in, you know, the way it's written as much as it is kind of the intention of it. So more like, I think about it as publication quality. Does that make sense? It's like more publication. It's going to withstand time versus something that's in the moment. So when we talk, so casual conversation, that could be social. It could be a one-on-one chat because it's more conversational back and forth. Teams like, Teams, Yammer. I really want Yammer to make it happen. I've been rooting for it for years with Microsoft. They're kind of repositioning Yammer to be more of this social channel or an easy way to kind of broadcast information across the company. For most small businesses, Teams is going to be able to do all of that. So Yammer isn't quite there yet, but that's what that blue Y is. And then using Stream, whether it's conversational or formal, to be able to take a recording from your CEO. We've done it with Clay before, where we'll do weekly updates from him and we'll post them on our video platform so people can access those videos. So noting, you know, where that information makes sense based on how you talk is important. Dawn, am I missing anything on speed or tone before we kind of talk a little bit? We're going to break here and talk more about meetings and presentations. But before we go too far, I want to make sure we didn't miss anything.
Yeah, so one thing to know, as Marissa said at the beginning of this, is that audience, while we kind of talk about audience being important, and it is important, a lot of these tools, again, have a blended use, right? So these ones that you're seeing on your screen that have that gray box behind them are tools that are not externally facing within Microsoft 365. Those are tools that are only available for within your organization. But Teams is one thing to highlight, I think, here. And that Teams, depending on how you set it up, you can use Teams to do that one-on-one or group chat type of communication, depending on how you set it up. You can also use Teams as your phone system, again, depending on how you set it up and if you have the phone plan. But Yammer is a social network, almost like for your team. We actually, ironically, we use Teams for our social network right now here. But Stream, again, is something that can be used in both a social and in a formal kind of way. And one last thing to note on the phone is that we have an account manager, Neil, who says, if you need an ambulance, you wouldn't send an email, right? You would call. So you have to have a ecosystem or a stack of tools to meet all of these different needs. So I know you're seeing a lot of icons on your screen, but there's a reason why. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that when we get to Better Together. So I believe that's all.
Perfect. Yeah, I think that's pointing out that those icons can represent the tools, and this idea of using one tool that we've been using with email or phone, limiting the number of tools that we have, has created kind of a sticky situation for all of our communication and collaboration. And so identifying which tools are best suited for your organization in that stack. I love that, the way you mentioned that, Dawn. That stack of tools is what's going to really set that efficiency for your organization. And like Dawn mentioned, we'll talk a little bit more about that here shortly. So when we talk about meetings and presentations, I purposely pulled this out from the audience, the tone and the response, the speed, because I think it deserves a little bit more attention, especially with us spending so much time virtually these days. Video conferencing platforms have transformed how we meet virtually. And by that, I mean planned, scheduled, involved conversations that more often than not used to happen in the office where we were all in person. And we'll talk about meetings more as part of collaboration shortly, but you know, when it comes to delivering information, communicating information, Teams and Stream tools like Teams and Stream allow you to kind of broadcast this content very easily. We talked about that with Stream, where you can essentially take a presentation, example, training opportunities, HR explanations, town hall, quarterly sessions with your leadership team. All of those where you are presenting or delivering information in a way other than text. So these are helping us do that so we can reach more people in ways that are meaningful to them. There's also alternatives. I say teams, I say streams, teams and stream, not multiple streams. But there are alternatives like Zoom. We use Zoom webinars because it has more, it meets more needs for us currently than Teams live events. We continue to evaluate team live events and hope to make a transition soon. But for us, we've had to identify in our technology stack that makes sense for us. We also work with a number of small businesses that partner with Nextiva for their hosted voice system. And they get in their package, there are other tools that kind of help bring these other aspects of communication together. So there are alternatives to the Microsoft 365 conversation that we continue to have. I will also say on the, oh, go ahead.
Sorry, I thought you were pausing for me to jump in.
No, go ahead, I'll pause.
This is how it is in the office too. Like we'll just talk and it, yeah, I think that this particular piece here is a really good example of sometimes you need more than one tool because one tool doesn't have all of the features and functionalities that you need in order to comprehensively fill that one particular need. So in this case, meetings and presentations. So we use all of these things on your screen here at WorkSmart just in different ways for different reasons, because Zoom comes with a lot of functionality when it comes to event style webinars, and we do a lot of those here, right? And then Teams is more secure and is better, has more functionality for collaborative meetings. So even if you're thinking about like the just communication, just, how do you communicate with your group in a one linear, I like Marissa's word, linear kind of way, you might need more than one tool for that if you need other features and functionalities in order to do your job.
So very true. And, we are, shameless plug, we are hosting a series of end user friendly trainings, and one that's upcoming is this Microsoft Teams for your everyday people. And I'm going to try not to sing it for you because every time I read that title, I want to break out in song and dance. So we're going to do a Teams training for the everyday people on August 27th. So make sure you head to our event center and register for that. It's going to be, we're going to focus on meetings and video calls within Teams. All right, so moving on to collaboration. I happen to think this is where email gets fun when it's used as the primary source for collaboration. And Dawn shared my notes to self. That's just one of the ways that I have used email, and I'm untraining myself to use other tools. So now, if you're an organization that's heavily dependent on project work, you're likely going to have a specific third-party tool that's going to handle project and task management. File storage and sharing. You might have a file server. You might have, like we have a cloud app specific to collaborating and storing documentation around our clients' environments. So there are going to be things within this collaboration conversation that are very specific to your organization and need to be done in that certain manner. So for all intents and purposes, when we talk about collaboration, we're going to talk really about these peripheral conversations. So, not being in the office, we have to consider how those conversations are handled, whether it's via email or in a video call. So how do you know that you're using the right tool for all of these things? File storage and sharing. So, and collaborative editing. I think this is an easy topic to talk about, but it's an easy topic to get into these very technical tidbits. So here's the highlighted version of collaboration and file storage and sharing. Microsoft 365 has their Office apps online. So that's your Microsoft Word, that's your Excel, your PowerPoint. You can use those on your desktop or you can use them in the cloud. The cool thing about using them is that whether you're using it in the desktop or in the cloud, if they're linked together, you can have this collaborative editing session. So what I mean by that is if you store an Office document, let's say a Word document, in your OneDrive, you can then share from OneDrive a link with the rest of, whether it's your team members or guests within, you can have external sharing options, so that if you wanted to share with your marketing company or your client, you can share that file and then you can both be in it in real time and collaborate. So that is kind of this using documents on their own, and kind of OneDrive, I like to say, is the equivalent to your personal share, your individual file library. So in a traditional server environment, every one of your team members has their personal, their private share, where they store documents, they grab documents. At that point, when you're working with a traditional file server, you're uploading an email and you're saying, okay, here's an email, here's my document, edit your document, track your changes, send it back to me. OneDrive takes that out. You send that link, you both access the document, you can do it in real time. It tells you where people have made changes. You can have actual conversations in the text right within the document, so you're preserving context. So there's a lot of really neat features when it comes to file sharing through OneDrive.
I will also say that OneDrive comes in handy really strongly if you are, mid-presentation where you're not supposed to be leading the content by yourself and your co-presenter's power goes out and maybe she made some changes right before. So if you were on the live call on Thursday, we have this presentation that you're seeing now in front of you stored within OneDrive. We were working on it collaboratively, and I could see where Marissa added some notes kind of right before the session started. Without her being there to clarify what these are, it shows me, a little, it highlights the slide a little bit differently to say, hey, changes were made while you were gone. So I was able to keep kind of rolling with it. So OneDrive, yay OneDrive.
Save the OneDrive.
Yes.
And I explain OneDrive first because I think it's a really easy comparative solution to like a Dropbox and tools that people use commonly to store files. But when you talk about the team side of file storage, and we'll get into this a lot more next week because, right here we're talking about collaboration, whereas next week we're going to talk more about file storage and sharing. So please join us. Again, another plug, join us next week. But this Teams and SharePoint actually work very much together. And a lot of times when you're using Teams for file storage and sharing, you're actually using SharePoint on the back end. So we put these icons together so that we're not excluding SharePoint from the conversation because it is a part of Teams. But when we talk about SharePoint, we're not typically talking about designing this massive SharePoint infrastructure that requires an actual designer and people that are familiar with the tool to set it up. We're talking about really easy use. You log into Teams, you create an environment where a group can work together, and there's a tab for files where you can share. That's actually being hosted within SharePoint, but it's giving you the same type of permissions, very similar type of permissions, to being able to have a team directory on a server where you might see, okay, there's an HR folder, and when I go into HR, I'm gonna see policies in this folder, and I'm going to see PTO forms in this folder. I'm going to see the organizational structure in this folder. Teams gives you an easy way to do that, whereas in OneDrive you would have to give permissions based on the files. So that's how we talk about it for small businesses, is Teams/SharePoint or OneDrive. One of the cool things I will say about, I'll give you a little bit of tip about Office apps. I really like this idea of co-authoring, but also this conversations. You can actually go in and mention someone. So if I say @Dawn Church, it will go ahead and notify her that I've asked her something on a document in line, so that I can ask a question and she can see the highlighted text that it references. That's just so much easier and way more productive, especially if you can even do it within Teams. So again, preview for some of our upcoming conversations about how you can actually do those types of things. But before I spend 400 minutes telling you all about file storage and sharing and giving you all of the juicy details we're going to do next week, I'm going to move on to project and task management. This is a cool tool, Planner. We've talked about in some of our other series, and we'll continue to talk about it in this one. Planner is a very, it's similar to Trello or Asana or a Monday.com, where it allows you to create these buckets and use these visual cards in order to organize tasks and assign out and manage work. We've also got notes and brainstorming. I think there's a tool, OneNote, that we've all had access to for a very long time, that maybe we don't know the best ways to use it. OneNote has a lot of really good functionality when it comes to taking notes and brainstorming, or even collaborating in meetings, where you can actually have a virtual notebook where you can import meeting details right from Outlook, and follow along together. You have that collaborative co-authoring feature like you do in in PowerPoint and Word. You have that in OneNote as well. So I think this is becoming my underdog for Microsoft 365. I know Dawn's been having some fun in OneNote lately, discovering some of the tools that help us really kind of collaborate on content.
Yeah, OneNote for sure. I'm starting to kind of fall in love with. But as Marissa mentioned, that insert meeting details thing has become really handy. Marissa and I meet quite a lot, probably twice a week outside of other meetings that involve other people. And within OneNote, if you have the need to take traditional kind of meeting minutes, or if you have really collaborative meetings where you're talking about project ideas that are going to turn into tasks, that insert meeting details thing, or like creating even a section within the notebook itself of like every single meeting that you've had together, you can go back and reference, okay, this is what we've decided, and here's the to-do that goes along with it. Here's who was in that meeting, which is part of the thing that automatically gets copied over when you insert those meeting details, and a number of other things. I am involved in a lot of projects that need a lot of brainstorming, so I really love having this virtual notebook. As much as I love to write things down by hand, I can just start typing my thoughts and then break that out into other different sections with to-dos and all the things. So OneNote for the win.
Yeah, absolutely. It's becoming more and more critical. And what I find is that the more of the tools that we use across the Microsoft 365 suite, and I say Microsoft 365 because that's what we use primarily, and all these tools are included. So why not invest the time to use them? The more that we understand about them, the less time we're spending in meetings, the quicker, the more efficient we are in meetings, because we don't have to be in person. We don't have to be speaking to each other in order to be able to collaborate together. And that's really the biggest message that we're driving with all these tools. Another thing that Dawn mentioned in the beginning, and I think is actually genius, is this concept of scheduling meetings, going back and forth. You don't have to go back and forth. There's a tool for that. Calendly is a great tool for being able to just publish your calendar and say, hey, if you need to meet with me, go ahead here, and you pick if it's a 30-minute time slot or an hour time slot, and it matches it up on my calendar based on kind of the way I want to manage my calendar. So you're allowing people to work with you, but you're also able to set the controls of how that happens. And I think that that's important as well. Then there's also Find Time, which is an office, it's built into Microsoft. It's actually, they took it away a couple years ago, and then there was this massive uproar over everyone, how could you take it away? And then they quickly put it back. So Find Time is an Outlook add-in that allows you to create a meeting poll. So if you've got a group of people and you need to schedule a meeting, what's better than just sending them a poll with some suggested meeting times, and then everybody can kind of collaborate together in that way. And as soon as a meeting time is agreed upon, you can set your required attendees, you can send your, your nice to have, but you don't have to attend. You can set all that there. So it's nice and easy. Everybody, it's the experience for the people on the other end is great, but it's also great for you. And it'll go ahead and auto schedule for you. Dawn talked about technology stack. And when we look at across this, it's very easy to see that Microsoft has built this as a platform. Google has built their G Suite as a platform that encompasses all of these tools to allow you to work together. So when earlier we said, how do they work better together? So we know now how we communicate. We know how we collaborate. So now we've got to talk about the technology. And it's easy to think, all right, well, there's technology. So, all right, I've got to go with everything that Microsoft 365 offers because it's complete stack. And I've got to go with I've got to go through everything that G Suite offers because it's complete stack. So then is the answer this one tool to rule them all? And I would say not entirely. So Teams, we've talked a lot about being this hub for Microsoft products. You've got OneNote, your planner, you've got SharePoint, you've got Stream, all of these pieces you can put inside Teams. So not only are you working within the Microsoft 365 suite and they integrate with one another, but now you can actually have Teams serve as your actual dashboard for your work. So you're not clicking between apps. So that's great. Teams, I'm just going to use as an example, is also great because it connects with thousands of other apps. It's not just for Microsoft 365. So, all these other goodies that you use to get your job done that Microsoft doesn't do for you, for us, for our content calendar, I have that done in Monday.com because of the way that I have the information built. We've been using it longer term. We haven't converted it to Teams. So Monday.com, as of last week, can now integrate as an app within Teams. I don't have to go to Monday.com anymore. I can just pop into my marketing team group here in Teams, and I can see it right there. Tiny Pulse is another one for us. That's our kind of our employee recognition and teamwork tool. We can do all of that within Teams because it's an app that connects within it. So now, instead of just talking about it as a hub for Microsoft 365 products, we're not talking about it as a hub for all of the ways that you work. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, so one thing that wanted to kind of clarify and note is we're not saying replace email with another set of problems, right? We're not saying go out and if we just said go out and get 10,000 different things to fill the 10,000 different things you need to do, that would create a whole world of different problems, right? You would have challenges with information and collaboration integrating with each other. You would have problems with 10,000 different passwords, or maybe you use one password for everything and that's really insecure. And then you also have security issues, right? Because you have your information out there in a lot of different ways. The part of the reason why we really do love Teams is because it does bring all of those different platforms, all of those different things in which the tools that are designed specifically to meet those needs into one window that is secure And if it's in Office 365, you do have one password for everything within Office 365, because it's just your Office 365 password, but it's not less secure, because it's behind the enterprise level security that Office 365 has, or Microsoft 365. I apologize, I'm still not used to saying that. But now Teams is just your window into all that work. It's not hosting all of that work, whereas email was hosting all of that work, and it wasn't designed to do that. So now here's the better way to still have all of that information out there and do it in a way that's efficient, but there's a better way to bring it together. And within Office 360, Microsoft 365, you have Teams, and that allows you to do that.
I think we need to just start like a ticker, and we just count throughout this series how many times we say Office 365 versus Microsoft 365. There's something there.
Yeah, there we go. I like gamifying things.
And you know, what Dawn was saying just now about kind of the security pieces, the flexibility pieces, as with choosing any technology, finding the stack that works for you is important. And so, you know, when we say providing one place for conversations, meetings, files, data, we're talking about empowering our people to meet our business goals efficiently and effectively. And so that's going to mean different things for different people. You know, you want flexibility for your fluctuating office. You want to be able, you want to know if you have certain communication that needs to be instant versus long-term communication. You know, the breadth of tone. If you have 4 different audiences within your company, you might need a tool that provides you with more flexibility around that. You know, communicating clearly and reliably also means securely. And I really emphasize that, because with the cloud, and as our people get, you know, as our teams get more and more familiar with the cloud, we've talked about shadow IT before, that when you don't give them the resources that help them do their job in a way that is meaningful for them, they will find their own tools. And finding their own tools means you have less control over how they're working and how they're communicating and the data that gets communicated. So with security, Dawn touched on this, there's a few benefits to choosing something like Microsoft 365 and the control that it gives you. Not all apps are at the same level of security. So, you know, think back a couple of months ago and all the attention that Trello and Zoom got for not being as secure. And so as if you talk about from an administrative level, in Microsoft 365, you have control over what apps you allow your people to bring into Teams. So it's not just, it doesn't have to be just a free-for-all. So that's another layer of security that's built into that. And then that password. You know, we had a session a couple weeks back about managing your users in the cloud, and we really do need to think about that differently, because the more accounts that are disjointed, the number of passwords increases, the level of security starts to go down if you can't centrally manage that all. And so having a tool like Microsoft 365 that can extend that single password beyond Microsoft 365 products is important, because it makes it easier to achieve the security we're looking for our data that is now traveling across all these different places. Simple is the way we're going here. So we've done a lot of talking. We've done a lot of talking about how you can communicate, how you can collaborate, picking the right technology stack for you. Here's some goodies for you. How do we change behavior, whether you're leading a team or if this is just for yourself? This list has some really good tips. I'm going to try to shoot through it pretty quickly. We're going to define the process. Eliminate the confusion off the bat by outlining how you should use your tools. Sit down with different people from throughout the company, consider your audience, your tone, your speed, create a matrix, something that's easy for people to digest and know exactly what they should be doing. If you want all of your formal communication to be published to Teams, let them know that. If you know, you always want communication to your clients to be on the phone, and as soon as you hang up, it's within a system that documents it, write it down. Also, chat instead of email. I can also make this, extend this from chat instead of email. Also, check your meeting habits, meaning, do you actually need to meet, or can you use a combination of OneNote and Teams chat in order to accomplish the same thing at a more time-friendly way? Moving away from email as a primary communication format is really important for like fast-moving teams. For WorkSmart, it was a game changer. Live in the cloud. Create and save your documents in the cloud by default with Microsoft 365. This will allow you to always have that easy shared accessibility to other people. The idea of file sharing and file collaboration is it should be easy to find. So if it lives in the cloud, more people can access it. It goes without saying, don't store it on your desktop because people can't find it there. Tip, autosave when you are storing something, whether it's in Teams/SharePoint or if it's in OneDrive, you have the option to autosave. So as you're typing and you're making notes and then your power goes out, you still have your notes because it was autosaved.
And your co-presenter also has your notes.
Right, and then your co-presenter has your notes when you're frantically trying to figure out to send them to her. The next one is share everything. So I say send links, not attachments. This will make sure that everybody gets on the same page, the same copy, your e-page of a file, whether that's SharePoint or in OneDrive. I always say, if you want to share a document from OneDrive or from Teams and you don't want people to change it, make accidental changes, there are settings and permissions that you can use to restrict editing and open as read only. So that helps you be in control of your files. I also share. I like to, share everything is good, but also to remind you to share externally from Microsoft 365. If your Microsoft account or your tenant, so for your entire organization, is set up for external permissions, you can actually share files outside of the organization. So for me, I collaborate with a couple different partners. It's nice to be able to share those files with them, especially when we're planning content for these webinar series. We can follow along on an outline and I can send that link to my panelists and they can go in and adjust questions and content in real time without any emails having to go back and forth. I think it's super helpful. Also, with external collaboration, you can revoke permissions and audit what's happened at any time. Again, that key to having the technology stack that allows you to have those that insight if that's important to you. Work on things at the same time basically means don't be scared to collaborate together. If you've been a Microsoft person for years, you might be a little nervous to do this because traditionally with file servers and SharePoint, this was clunky. The Microsoft has really invested with Microsoft 365. They have really invested on real-time co-authoring and collaborative editing. So I encourage you to make sure you're taking advantage of those with your team and use those app mentions. Again, that at symbol and someone's name in order to tag them in the context, to give them a notification or to assign them to some sort of activity. Bring in external project partners, get them, reliably get them in. And solicit feedback. I cannot repeat this enough. Implementing tools is great. Getting feedback from the team as you roll that out, grabbing department heads to help you create the structure is good. A small group of people to help you make decisions based on the way you work. Once you implement those tools, making sure they're effective requires you to solicit feedback. So I encourage you to send forms. There's a Microsoft Forms tool in Microsoft 365 if you want to find an easy way to do it. But you can also just ask people a couple questions. Can you easily find data that you work with regularly? How many places do you currently store data? Which tools are you using to collaborate daily? How many tools do you need to stay on top of company updates? The answer to those questions will help you know if there are training opportunities. Do we have the the process in place, but people aren't familiar with it? Or is it actually a tool problem? Is the tool not giving them the access that they need? But this makes it this ongoing collaborative effort to make sure that everybody feels good about how they get information and how they share information and how they work together. All right, so I'm going to take a breath. Dawn, do you have any questions?
Do I have any questions?
Yeah.
I have so many questions. I don't have any questions off the top of my head. We had somebody on the last call ask about, they had the opposite problem of people calling them when they don't need an ambulance. So we kind of talked about on the call, again, defining that process and distributing that process and setting expectations with your team around what to use when. And we actually have a PDF that you're going to get if you're getting this recording via email. It's actually linked in the email that outlines exactly that, what to use when, specifically for a communication and collaboration stack within Office 365. So it kind of breaks it down by how's your speed? Do you need that instant communication? What's the tone? Is it something that's like formal, maybe like a HR document, or is it something that's more casual, like a happy hour update that's happening later today? And if you need collaborative editing, so what to use when. So it kind of breaks everything down. So check your inbox for that. If you are using the Office 365 suite, it's a good thing that you could print out and distribute. Or because we're living in a virtual environment right now, just share a link with your team, or to post it with your teams.
Digital world.
Yeah, join us for everyday people for all the dance breaks.
Right.
We're gonna have to come up with a playlist for that event, I think.
I like that.
Yeah.
If you are watching this recording and you did not attend the original event, that checklist will also be available on our Knowledge Center for download. So that won't be attached to this video, but if you go to our Knowledge Center, you'll be able to access that.
Yeah, and if you have additional questions, you can reach out to either of us anytime. Our emails are on your screen. And then I will plug some next events. There we go. All right, so next week you can join us for a bigger conversation on file storage and co-authoring best practices and organization best practices, so that you continue to have a virtually organized organization. It personally drives me a little crazy when I can't find the things that I want and I need in the moment. So there's a lot of different storage options, right, within Microsoft 365. So again, what to use when and how to use them. So, and then again, how to communicate that to your team. So join us for that next week. And then the following week, we have backup to basics. So we're going to talk about why it's important to back up your data, even when it's in the cloud, because data loss happens even in the cloud. So it's important to have the right backup tools and solutions in place. And again, to distribute how and when to use them to your team. So we're going to talk about that. And then the following week, we have a little bit of an interruption into our technology schedule, but I'm very excited about it. We're bringing in Becky Jacobs, who is the CEO of Simple Change, and she was on our panel a couple of weeks back, the Fast Forward panel. She's going to be talking about leading culture for today. So all of the stuff that's happening in the world right now, right? There's a lot of stuff that's happening, and she's going to be talking to us about how we as leaders can navigate that to help our team members feel indefinite and be supported, and also for us to thrive as an organization, right? So we're talking a little bit about the modern workplace. I'm very excited about it. And then we have a bunch of other stuff coming up Marissa, can you click next on that slide?
It doesn't want to come up.
No.
There it is.
There we go. So you can see we got Teams for Everyday People. That is a 2-part training. We're quite excited about it. We're going to have one just on meetings and videos, and then the following one will be about tasks and lists and the 3 tiers of Teams, which is one of my favorite things to talk about within Teams. We're going to get a little bit into cybersecurity, and we're going to do an actual end user cybersecurity training in September, which I'm super excited about because we'd like to talk about strategy a lot. But now we're going to kind of get into the nitty gritty and work with all of your end users on how to spot a spam email and other things to that effect. So, and then we got a couple other things. So if you are interested in joining us for any of those, go to info.worksmart.com/events center, and you can register for them all. And I believe that's it. Do you have anything else, Marissa?
I don't.
Cool. Alrighty. Well, thank you everyone for watching this re-recording, and we look forward to seeing you later on this week. Have a good one.
See you then.